Good afternoon, everybody. This is Brian Tully, the founder of Tully Law Group. Welcome to our third annual Medicaid Update and Changes webinar. Just like always, we will give it a couple of minutes for people to join in, and then we'll get started again. All right, so I will be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, my name is Brian Tully, and we're going to have our guests, Dennis and Jim, join us. Very good. So again, Brian Tully, the founder of Tully Law Group, thank you for joining us for our third annual Medicaid Update and Changes webinar. We have two fantastic guests today, and we'll be answering or attempting to answer and discussing different options and situations and programs and current issues that are evolving with Medicaid here in New York State. Our first guest is Dennis McCoy. He's a partner here at Tully Law Group. He concentrates his practice in the areas of Medicaid planning and eligibility and applications. His legal skills, which we see every day, are augmented by his health science background, which he effectively uses to assist the clients in securing necessary and critical health services. He's joined us for the last 2 years, as has our next guest, Jim Sluder. So welcome, Jim. Jim is currently the Division Administrator of Medicaid Services for the Suffolk County Department of Social Services, having spent 21 years working in the Medicaid division. Jim previously served as the head of training and procedures for Medicaid in Suffolk County, where he conducted in-house trainings as well as several community advocacy presentations, of course, throughout Suffolk County. We're grateful to have you both, so thank you for joining us, Jim and Dennis.
So, Brian, just as housekeeping, someone had asked if you can raise your volume. I'm hearing you fine, but they might be having a
Yeah,
problem.
so it's the same microphone I've been using
It got
for
louder.
years.
It got
So
louder.
I'm glad you were able to type into the Q&A. So if anybody has questions, they can also enter it into the Q&A. I've moved my microphone a little bit closer. Perhaps
This
there's an
is better.
adjustment on your side. All right, good. So again, thank you, Jim, for joining us. What we're going to be talking about today, which is no surprise to anybody, is the M word. We're going to be talking about Medicaid. We're not giving legal advice. We're not giving legal advice whatsoever. We'll talk for about 40 to 45 minutes, answer some questions and issues that have been percolating throughout the recent past. And again, if any of our viewers have questions, feel free to go to the Q&A box and we'll answer them. If it's pertinent to the current topic, we'll deal with it. Otherwise, we'll cover it at the end of the program. Okay. We've been doing webinars here at Tully Law Group for 5 years. We started back in the spring of 2020, just as COVID was starting to take off, and we've continued doing them so that we can share with our audience and those interested in different elder care and estate planning matters. So tullylawgroup.com is our website. We have all of our past webinars up there if anybody's interested, and you can even find the last two of Jim and Dennis and I talking about these issues. So with that introduction, let's start off with the topic that is on everybody's minds, right? The idea of a look back period. And so the concern is there was a 30-month look back signed into law, if I'm not mistaken, putting it that way, back in 2020. It just hasn't been implemented yet. We've had some starts and some announcements and so forth and dates, but where do we stand with that, Mr. Jim Sluder?
Well, as far as we were told in January at our latest conference, we're looking at 2026 at the earliest for implementation of this.
Okay.
But there has been no change to the status of that proposal. So as far as approval from CMS, Centers for Medicaid, Medicare Services, nothing has changed. So it is still awaiting approval. Therefore, we're looking at the earliest a 2026 implementation date.
Okay. We have an at the earliest, so an at the latest could be a never.
Could be a never. Could
Okay.
be a never.
Yeah.
No definitive
Okay.
ruling on whether it's even happening, but
All right.
it will not happen until they just keep kicking it. It's always the following year, 2026 at the earliest right now.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay. So go ahead, Dennis.
Well, and Jim, when you say 2026, you mean their usually rollout date is in April, correct? That would be the rollout date?
we did not get a month. That's the
Oh, really?
the
Okay.
actual quote was 2026
I
at
see.
the earliest. That's as specific as they would even
Okay.
give, and again, with no approval, and so I
Okay.
I
So
don't
we-
anticipate seeing this soon.
So,
Yeah.
I think a year and a half ago, there was some Senate bills trying to get away from the 30-month look back. You've heard nothing on those as well.
No, the one that I did look up is still sitting there. It's still at committee as far as I'm aware, as far as it shows. And we've got no further guidance. I did reach out and ask my liaison and they had no update for me, so.
Right, okay,
Right.
yeah, I don't even know if those bills are still being considered or they're just dead. I don't even know.
Right.
So
So,
right now.
but Dennis, so the bill was, there was a bill brought in the Senate to eliminate the look back period for home care. And then there was also another bill, which we'll get into next, I guess, Dennis. But
Right.
if I can address, there was a gentleman that asked if the look back was to start in 2026. So it's a 30-month look back, which is different than the 5 years or 60-month look back for nursing home care. So it would be 2.5 years back from that point in time. And if we could also clarify then, applications filed prior to any commencement or implementation would be filed prior to the commencement of the actual look back period. So they would not be susceptible to it. Right. Okay. So go ahead, Dennis. I'm sorry.
All right, no, so that was I was going to address that as well. So,
Okay.
Jim, this is the first time we've had a look back, but there's been other times where Medicaid changes tack on some things. So if someone were to just apply for Medicaid, this is always the question we get. If we just apply for Medicaid provisionally, we never really got home care. Are those people that do that, are they going to be seen as grandfathered in or no? That's the question. We
Great.
get
And
asked
that
a
is-
lot.
That is the question. There was talk at one point that consumers that already had Medicaid would be grandfathered in. It would only be for new consumers applying, but I don't know that that's regulatory or if that was just the way they were going to roll this out. So that
Right.
could change when we see a final implementation.
Right.
I
But
see.
so
Yes,
for
we-
our viewers though, what we're talking about here is provisional Medicaid is where they've applied and they're in the program, but they're not yet receiving long-term care services. Okay. So we've run into some clients through the years from other firms where they've actually applied, they're in the program, but it's considered provisional, and they've done that perhaps to get in before the look back begins. So Jim, what you're sharing is they, under past discussions, they'd be grandfathered in, but perhaps not.
Right, it could go one of many ways. They could be grandfathered, it could only be those that already have home care, which would certainly, I would feel very confident saying those would be grandfathered, because there's
Yeah.
never been talk about going back for that. The other thing the rollout could be, it could be from a certain date that it's effective, that we go 30-month, but they also could roll it month by month, meaning it's effective a certain date,
Mhm.
and as each month goes forward, the look back grows to 30 months. So maybe
Right, like they did with the
1 month, 2 month.
Right.
So a lot of up in the air questions about this policy until it
Right.
actually,
Well, that's how they rolled out the full 5-year look back. They
right,
just-
from 3 to 5, that's how they extend it. So.
Right, I got
Okay.
you. Okay.
Good. Thank you for that. Okay.
Oh.
Anything else you wanted to cover on that, Dennis?
No, the answer is we have to just wait like we're all doing. And Jim, I mean, people will probably ask, because you're from Suffolk County, they wouldn't just roll it out in one county, it would be statewide type of a rollout.
It's statewide.
Yeah,
And
so
it'll be uniform.
right, so what it could be extrapolated, say, listen, this is what the state is telling Medicaid in general in the state of New York.
It's a state policy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good
gotcha. Okay, very good.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So we're gonna move on from that. Of course, if people have specific questions, they can ask in the Q&A, and we'll get to them later if we can provide a clearer answer. All right. So next topic, Department of Social Services is once again, since the pandemic, requiring yearly annual Medicaid recertifications. What we have found with our clients throughout this commencement again is that the recertification approvals are taking months to actually come back in. The issue becomes, can the applicant lower their actual spend down to their pooled income trust while they're waiting for the approval of the recertification? Because the income limits have changed, right? They've increased, and some people no longer require the pooled trust. So are they able to, on their own, lower their actual payments?
Okay, so I'll address the 2 parts. So the first part, as far as months for the renewals, it's interesting for me to hear, because my 2 community Medicaid units are pretty much caught up and processing current renewals. Now, I say current, you could be talking about a month from a month ago, but they are processing fairly currently. So I'm concerned about things that are taking months with an S on it, because that shouldn't be at this point, but that may be something Dennis and I talk about after this, because he may have some examples of that. That's fine. But beyond that, as far as lowering the deposits into a trust that would meet a spend down, in my notes, I wrote, change at your own risk, right? So we cannot advise what you do to meet your spend down. We can't certainly advise you put this much in a trust. We're advising that your spend down is this, and if you have a trust, yes, we would discount that. So until we officially lower a spend down, I can't say, yes, you can put less in. However, if you were to know what you believe it to be, and you were to put the correct amount in, and we went and recertified and you were correct, there would be no issue. I say at your own risk, because if the calculation is off, and it's a slightly higher spend down than you anticipated,
Right.
you can now not go back and put money into the trust for that month. You would have to meet the spend down. So officially, no. Unofficially, if you know your calculations are good, then there would be no harm in that. It's just a little risky if you're talking about large differences in the spend down.
Right. Right. So practically speaking, if the contribution to the pooled trust, according to the attorney's calculations, are going to drop from, let's say, $1,000 to $500, they can start making, again, that's not being recommended, it's not advice, they could start making the lower deposit of the $500. And as long as the budget comes in with that same number, then we're good. Okay.
Right. If it's right, it's right. Yeah.
That's right. But if they stay at the $1,000 and they keep making those what are now going to be larger deposits than necessary than budgeted, that money just remains in the income trust. So they don't get that back. So that's the other side of it. Okay. Dennis?
Yeah, just one last point on that. IRAs are always a problem, of course. Let's say a case was filed. Now, recertifications may be moving faster, but some of the actual initial eligibility determinations are slower. So let's say you applied at the end of 2024 and you put the IRA in payout in 2024, and then Medicaid comes back around and says, no, for 2025, we have a different calculation than you, but I can't go backwards in time and fix that because 2024 is over. They're getting to the case in 2025.
Right.
How do you reconcile that?
That's a good question, because you can't go back in time.
Right.
Changes are usually prospective. So when I looked at this,
Right.
thinking of it from a renewal perspective, we wouldn't be concerned with that. What's done is done, what's passed is passed. But on a new
Right.
application, I mean, I want to say we can't penalize for that, but I'd have to look further into that
Yeah.
on an application to see what.
It just happens at the end of the year. That's why I
Yeah.
asked, because there's no way if I file a case in November, let's say if I'm doing not even immediate need, let's say I'm doing a general application, maybe it's for someone going into an assisted living, can't do immediate need, and that's going to slow the case down, take 2 or 3 months like normal processing, and it's fair. I'm not saying that's the unfairness. I'm saying the IRA back and forth and say, oh, that's different. We see it differently, and whatever happens, happens, and we come up with a different calculation. I can't change that backwards.
Right.
That's the question.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can't see how we could penalize someone for something that was
Okay.
in the past.
Yeah.
Right.
It's too late to fix it.
Right.
So if that were to come up, I'd certainly like to see that, but it
Right,
really
okay.
generally, we're gonna go perspective and tell you to do something.
Right. Right, because maybe they're already in a facility that's waiting to get paid. It's Medicaid pending. They took the person, and now the IRA, technically, if it's not in the right payout status, normally you're allowed to catch up in that year.
Right.
But if you can't, now they say, well, now your IRA wasn't in a proper payout status, therefore you're not Medicaid eligible because the IRA is a resource. That's
Right.
So there's certainly a risk with that, and so for the benefit of our viewers, what we're talking about here specifically is Medicaid eligibility, and in my terminology, IRAs don't count as assets technically in our terminology, as long as they are in periodic payment status and there's payments coming out. In essence, the required minimum distribution, if we're married, but it can be an increased payment, which is where we might have a discrepancy as to what that is, which is what Dennis is asking about. And if we have an application at the end of the year and Medicaid comes back and says, well, the monthly payment should have been X, but we only had Y, we can't fix that because that year has come and gone. So we'd be able to, from what Jim is sharing, fix it moving forward. Potentially.
Potentially, yeah, I would like to say that. That's what I'd like the answer to be. I want to take a little bit back with me and
Okay.
look a little
Okay.
deeper. Make sure that
Okay.
we're not
okay.
Got it.
calculating that. But
All right, so I'm glad to see that your research is now caught up, so that's good. Because that was always NASA was a little slower, a lot slower in some aspects. So I'm glad to see Suffolk is back where they used to be prior to COVID, actually. You were pretty
yeah,
quick.
we're close.
turnaround. Yeah,
Close.
okay.
That's the tight ship that Jim's running. There you go.
Yeah, I mean.
And we had a question pop up, so let me address it now before we get too far away from the topic. The question is, so to clarify from Deborah, if we begin Medicaid this year for in-home care, we don't know if we would lose that benefit due to the look back period in 26 or whenever this happens. So the way I'd answer that is if Community Medicaid is commenced and we have care in the house, we are in the program. And as Jim said, that would be grandfathered in. Agreed? Yeah.
Yes, no, I mean, with 100%, no, but 99% certainty, I would
I
be
understand.
very surprised if they made that change where they
Yeah.
didn't include that.
Yep.
That would be very unusual.
Okay,
Very
agreed.
unusual.
All right, so hopefully that answers. And Kevin, we got your question before, the 30 months. If they do that, and then Deborah, that was your question. Okay, so the third issue has to do with VA benefits. All right, and what we're looking at is the Department of Social Services in Suffolk requires that applicants for Medicaid services apply for VA benefits, even for those that are ineligible for VA benefits. So I'm going to hand this off to you, Dennis, right now, just because you know, it's your department that's working that through. So go ahead with the question and the issue.
Okay, so basically what we have in Suffolk County is Medicaid is said to be the payer of last resort, and VA benefits are seen as a payer before Medicaid, unless you talk to the VA, of course. And that's the problem. There's two programs that don't work well together. The problem, if it was a one-page application, would be very simple. It's not. It's about a 15 to 19-page application asking for all kinds of information from the veteran that you might not be able to get because the veteran can't tell you. You can't find the discharge paperwork. There's a lot of stuff you can't fill out. Medicaid, on Medicaid side, it says, well, just file the best you can and get the application in. That's not good enough for people because they keep pushing back and they say, well, we shouldn't have to apply for this and it's it's cumbersome and it slows everything down. But then looking at the actual qualification for VA benefits, if you're not, you see a lot of times especially on the the widow's benefit that you get from a veteran has passed away, his spouse is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
On the death certificate, it says you're ever in the armed forces and they say yes. Automatically that triggers the Department of Social Services file VA Medicaid application. The issue is they may have been in armed forces, but they never had one active duty day during a wartime period, and that's very defined. I've pushed back on this, and eventually it's seen, okay, fine, we'll back off of it, but it's like a fight every time. So it seems like I don't know if there's training or there's going to be a training on VA benefits, who applies. Let's say if I give you a trust that's just been funded, there's a 36-month look back for VA benefits. You're not eligible. You're blown out of the water for that reason alone. But I can't have this discussion because it seems to me the examiners don't know who's eligible and not, and it's not their job to figure it out. So just have everyone blanket apply. And it slows down cases and it really frustrates my clients because they don't want to fill out this application. As I said, if it was one page, no one would care. It's not. It's very, very big. And they ask the VA, and then the VA says all this other stuff on top of it. That's the worst phone call you can make because then it scares them, and they tell them at the end, well, if you get Medicaid, you're not eligible. That's the last part. So it's just this runaround, and it happens enough.
And if I could just layer into that, there's obviously another scenario is if a person is a veteran, but they just didn't serve during wartime, right? Then no aid and attendance benefits whatsoever. So that's just another scenario versus the trust scenario. So help us, Jim.
I cannot. No, I can a little bit. So yes, I mean, the stance has always been, and we've gone back and forth with the state on this.
Yeah.
We cannot are not expected to know the rules and regulations about who can and can't apply for benefits or be eligible for benefits. That's said, yes, we're well aware, active wartime, all of those basic criteria. But here's the good thing. We're working very closely with the Suffolk County Veterans Service Agency now, the VSO. So we have set up a referral process whereby we can reach out to them and they will verify whether or not someone is even eligible without filing that application. They will do that and turn that back. So we're sending lists daily in certain units. Here's 5 people. Can you just give me a status? So that is alleviating a lot of the sending consumers to actually go fill out that ridiculously long application that I agree is like horrifying. We've brought the Veterans Service Organization in. They've done some training for my staff to teach them some of the requirements. Not that we want to start applying those rules, but to be familiar with them at least. So it's a little bit more in our heads. And this referral process is evolving because we've had some speed bumps. We just met with them again about some other issues. So it's kind of growing and turning into a more formal process.
Yeah.
But that is, I think, going to provide a lot of relief for this issue, where instead of asking a consumer to go apply, we can just ask the Suffolk County VSO to look into the eligibility, and they'll respond within that day and give us something that says they're not eligible. And then we've met our requirement. We don't have to even ask any further.
All right, so that's on the cases
That's
right now.
That's the non-wartime ones, right?
Yeah. So right now
we'll send any. Yeah, we'll send any of them there.
Right, but the VSO isn't going to know if a trust was funded and there's no eligibility there. It sounds like that's going to be the same process.
No,
Sure.
but most of the time they can just tell us the person's, many of them are not eligible. At this point, the majority of what we see are not wartime. They're not, that's a lot
Yeah,
of what's coming in. So
Yeah,
Okay,
that's true.
it does alleviate a lot of the issues.
got
Right,
it.
okay, that's
Okay.
true, right. All right, that's the biggest point of all this is how cumbersome it is. And also for those in nursing homes, they're only entitled to the $90, which is true aid and attendance. And they're not eligible. I mean, Medicaid can't count that as anything anyway. They must ignore true aid and attendance. And a lot of times veterans will not apply for the $90. They don't want to because they're in a nursing home. They're veterans. They like the money kept for veterans on the outside of a nursing home. So maybe they can use the money. There's that camaraderie. They just don't want to apply for it. They don't need it. I'm in a nursing home. I don't want it. I don't need an extra 90. I already got 50. I'm in a nursing home. I really don't need the money. What's $90 going to get me? If I can keep a fellow veteran in the community, that $90 would help them, give it to them. I don't want it. And that's the pushback we get. So with the VA application with nursing home, the only nursing home that I guess you can push for is the Long Island State Veterans Home, where the VA application can be used. But realize any monies that are received from the VA can do ask for an accounting, and they want to know where you spent it. And if you didn't spend it on yourself, they want it back. So that's the problem. And if they get the VA benefits, because starting them is hard, stopping them is harder. If DSS adds it as part of their income to go to the nursing home has the money. The VA says, what'd you do with the money? Oh, you're on Medicaid, went to nursing home? Oh, we want it back. They figure it out next year, and they want all that money back. Nursing home's not giving it back.
Right.
Then we have to, the system to try and get that to work, we'd have to go back to Medicaid. And Medicaid would want a letter from the VA saying, okay, you want the money back, so give them the letter. We'll take it out of we'll give the maintenance unit, will have to pull the case, rebudget it going backwards in time, tell the nursing home to give back the money, and then give it back to the VA. Very cumbersome. You can imagine how many months that takes.
Sure.
I can't.
Yeah.
So we had an attorney comment that I was told from a caseworker at social services that they're not allowed to reach out to the VA directly. Is that accurate, or that's old?
Well, we're not reaching out to the VA. We're reaching out to the Suffolk County Veterans Service Agency.
Right. So now you are right.
Which is a Suffolk County agency that they will handle VA issues with the VA or avoid dealing with the VA if they can as well, because it is a monster of an agency, a lot going on over there. So we're not going to the VA. So that's not incorrect. We wouldn't just go to the VA for one of our applicants.
Got it.
And
then,
Jim, how long, just so we know, how long have you, this new program that you instituted, how long has that been going on?
Sheesh. I'm gonna say we started at the end of 2024.
Okay, so it's relatively new.
It's relatively new. It's been a few months that we've been.
Okay, good.
and it's not every applicant. Or is it?
It could be. In other words, if there's an issue about a veteran's benefit, they should be utilizing this process where we can to
Okay.
get that verification of eligibility.
Okay. And then Carol asked, just to verify, if you or a partner were never a veteran, they must still apply. And the answer is no. The trigger is going to be on the application. Yeah. Okay. All right. Suffolk, so understood. Okay. All right. Now, I think that covers that topic, Dennis, right? We're good?
Yeah, pretty much.
Great,
I'm
great.
glad to see that program I didn't know about,
Yeah.
Jim, so that's good to know. That's a big help. So that's fine.
Good.
Yeah, I think it'll help. I'm trying to push it to make it bigger and expand it, but we're starting. We're doing it.
That's it. All right. So our last topic is disability approvals from the Department of Health. Okay.
Yeah.
So Medicaid applications are approved by DSS. Home care agencies are not able to service the cases due to provisional coverage because the DOH, Department of Health, did not process the disability approval, and the spend down wasn't budgeted to the approval of the pooled supplemental needs trust. So Dennis, can you clarify and kind of
Sure.
reword that?
What generally happens, just for everyone who has never applied for Medicaid before, you apply for Medicaid, and let's say you have excess income. We didn't go over the income standards, so maybe we should just mention that really quickly. For a single person, in New York State right now, it's $1,800 a month is what you're allowed as a Medicaid applicant,
Yep.
plus a $20 disregard, so it's $1,820.
Mhm.
For a two-person household, which usually husband and wife, it's going to be $2,453. That's with the $20 disregard. So if let's take a single person, if you make over your $1,820,
Mhm.
you have only a few ways to get rid of the excess income or spend down or overage. It's called a couple of different things. One is to pay a medical bill, submit that to Medicaid, and they'll discount your overage by that medical bill. Two is to pay it directly to Medicaid. Nobody likes that. Sorry, Jim, but nobody likes it. And the third way is to transfer the money to what's called a pooled income trust with a charitable organization. There are companies like NYSARC and KTS and all these different companies. So when you're over 65, which you figure age disabled already, but you have excess income, you want to put it in the pooled income trust, you have to send in what's called a disability packet. The local DSS does not review those. They go to the Department of Health as a disability unit because New York State wants to know what your disability is. If it's a qualifying disability for you to be allowed to put your excess income spend down into that pooled income trust. So that review gets done concurrently with the application. So with the application, we turn in the disability review. The local examiner, Suffolk County DSS or whatever county, pulls off that disability packet and sends it to Albany to the disability review unit. Now, if we're doing an immediate needs case, it's 14-day turnaround. Now, Suffolk County has been very good with turning around the cases timely. The problem is they're done with their part of it. The disability review hasn't been completed. So your case is open with that spend down. If you try and use that Medicaid, nothing's going to happen until the spend down is zeroed out. DSS has to zero it out. They cannot zero it out until Department of Health approves the disability. There is the problem. So on immediate need cases, with such a quick turnaround time, when they first came out prior to COVID, it was quicker. I don't know what the system was, but it worked. It was kind of the same. So we would turn in an approved pooled income trust with proof that the excess income has been deposited into it so Medicaid can open the case. Now the disability review is taking longer and longer. So what we have is home care agencies waiting in the wings saying, we can't start the case because there's an overage here. So the case is we don't have Medicaid. So you got the shiny card that you got from Medicaid, but you can't use it. So the clients come back and say, listen, I did everything I was supposed to do. How do I make this faster? And I don't know the answer. So that's the issue. And sometimes it's like a month later. So they had Medicaid last month, but they couldn't use it. So they're still not getting home care. They're not getting prescription coverage. They're not getting any coverage because they can't use Medicaid because the overage still exists. That's the problem.
Got it. Sounds like a simple issue.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say simple ones.
So, yeah, Dennis, I agree 100%. This has been an issue I've had since its inception.
Yeah.
Well, I should rephrase that. When we have this situation, an immediate needs case where we need to do a disability review, we label that disability review as expedite immediate needs. We put that on every single one. Unfortunately, there's nothing in the state's policy that includes the disability review process as an expedited process for immediate need. So while we can do our piece on the eligibility side, the nurses can go out and do their piece, and two pieces of my area have to scramble to get this case expedited. The state has no requirement to do the same on their part. It's been sincerely a complaint that I've had for years. We at one point early on had like one or two people at the state that were expediting them probably incorrectly for us because they didn't realize it wasn't a requirement, and we got really lucky with that. They have slowed down. We've seen across the board disability reviews, I agree, take longer at the state in the past year or so. It's been quite a bit longer. They do have 90 days to do it, which seems
right.
Insane to me, but quite honestly, because we used to do it in-house and we do it in 30. But so all I can say is I have reached out to the state to bring this issue up again, because I think I've waited long enough not complaining about it that now I can say it came up again and it's coming from someone else.
Okay.
So mention, no, I try not to
Don't
do
mention my
that.
That's a bad idea. No, but even to that end, Jim, let's say DOH is going to take its time and eventually have the disability review approved. What is now the county's response when they get the disability approval? Are they relooking at the case? Because I'm finding that I'm sending the verification of deposits again and again with the disability review, and it seems like nobody was looking.
Yeah, well, I saw that in your comments of stuff, and I already have sent something out to advise staff that
Okay.
they need to be looking for those.
Thank you.
And flagging those.
Thank you.
When-
That's a big thing.
Yeah, if we have that on file already, we shouldn't need it again.
Yeah.
You know, it's good that you're sending a second one as like a trigger
Yeah.
of find it.
Yeah.
But the team I met with yesterday couldn't, I won't say they couldn't believe it, but it was interesting for all of us to hear that
Okay.
those are going unflagged. And I
Because
know
then
what's
it goes-
happening. It's
Right, it goes down to maintenance. The case leaves their desk, goes down to maintenance, and then it's just gone.
right. And that's the issue, is that it's going to a team that isn't aware that this was an immediate needs case.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have any flags. So they're working on building something
Okay.
in so that they
That's
have that
fantastic.
trigger
Mhm.
from the minute it goes through.
Thank you. That's
It's an easy
helpful.
fix on our end. It's just
Right.
something that got missed.
Okay, that's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Look at that, things getting done.
Well, Jim's already on top of it. See, I didn't have to say anything, so he already
It's great, great.
figured this one out himself. All right,
So-
so I see there's two questions there, but I don't know what the first one says. I don't know what they're asking.
So I think it's just the second one. It seems to be a reiteration.
Okay.
A home care application with a pooled income trust and related disability docs, is that required, or should it be a chronic care application? I think that there's a couple moving parts there, so I'll just answer it. The home care application and the pooled supplemental needs trust, pooled income trust, that's the appropriate avenue when we're looking for services within the community, whether it's in the person's home or apartment or some assisted living facilities or even an assisted living program facility. The chronic care application is nursing homes. So that's just when you have a greater need of care and the community is no longer the appropriate and safest place for that person to be. So that would be the deciding factor as to which avenue is chosen in that regard. So hopefully that answers that for you, Mr. Anonymous. Happy to answer more if you want to rephrase that. But that covers our 4 issues, Jim, right? And we're sitting here, we've covered our time as well. Some good news is, just to recap, we know that the potential 2.5-year look back for community Medicaid services will not be starting in 2025. That's where you say yes, Brian. Okay, good. Thank you, Jim.
We know that.
Okay, good. We know that. All right. But it could start in 2026, the earliest. But we'd agree there's a lot that the feds have to do for that to even happen.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We talked about VA, we talked about the recertifications, all good stuff. And for our viewers, if some of that is on the technical side, well, that's why you work with an experienced elder law attorney. Medicaid, there's been a handful of cases through my 27 years of doing this where I've actually shared, you probably can handle that application on your own, but the vast majority of folks with assets or income or spouse concerns, you do need an experienced elder law attorney and firm to kind of walk you through that. There's a lot of moving parts. Now, Jim, please, any other questions, topics, updates that you can share?
Yes, a few. For several reasons, there's a bit of uncertainty and some changes, right? We have a new administration. We also are coming out of the public health emergency still. We're still what they're calling unwinding from that. And so rules are still kind of in a state of flux. So some things that are on the horizon, maybe. There's 5 changes that occurred during the health emergency that are set to sunset, which would mean that everything would revert back to the way it was. So I'll just touch those really quickly.
Great.
Currently, we are not looking at resources at renewal. We only look at eligibility. That may resume, looking at resources may resume July 1st if this extension is not granted, this waiver. So that would be something that we would start asking for at renewal again.
Right.
We are currently auto renewing Medicaid consumers that have SNAP. That would end as well. Also, many consumers are staying on the health exchange, the New York State of Health. They had Medicaid through that. And at certain trigger points, they generally would come back over to our system at the DSS. The state's been holding certain populations in that system, and we have not been transitioning, which is nice for the consumer. And for us, it's less work all around. That may change. So people on this call or other people you work with may suddenly find that they get something saying that they're being moved between a different system. That could happen. Auto renewing people with just Social Security benefits may go away. We've been doing that. So a lot of populations do not even receive a renewal. They just get a notice that says they've been automatically renewed.
Okay.
That may end. And then lastly, not really that big of a deal here, but we've been granting automatic aid to continue if you ask for a hearing on something. That may end. All of that is set to end July 1st, unless something happens at a higher level, much higher level than me. So that's just a little warning of things that could come. It's nothing earth shattering, but it's certainly some easements that will go away.
And as you shared, all they're doing would be, or what they would be doing is putting it back to where we were in the beginning of 2020 and prior.
Yes.
Got it.
The exception of that being the auto renewing Social Security only consumers, that's been happening for a very long time. And if that were to go away, that would be a large workload coming back to us. It doesn't affect much, but it's a big workload here.
Okay.
So Jim, the one question I had, because when you say SNAP, it's people that are listening might not know what SNAP is. What is SNAP?
You may know it as food stamps.
Okay.
That's its old-fashioned name. It's now SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition
Assistance Program.
I was gonna say application program. I don't know why. But yeah, it's the food benefits.
Okay, and that's still auto renewed right now. Once you applied, you auto renew, and they just keep you on the food stamp program.
It's not the SNAP that's auto renewing. It's the Medicaid. Consumers that have SNAP are renewing their SNAP the way they do. And I don't want to speak to SNAP because I stay in that side of the building, but because they have SNAP, their Medicaid has been automatically.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. That's a clientele we don't really have too many of either. So I don't know. I'm not too familiar with it.
So that automatic renewal will stop.
Right.
That automatic renewal will stop.
For Medicaid. Got it.
Okay.
So fun stuff coming this summer.
Yes. Okay. So, all right. So no
any other questions, folks? Otherwise, we're going to start to wrap up. Thank you all for joining us. We answered.
I don't think you missed any.
I think there was a question about VA applications. I don't know where it went. So it's interesting. Lawyers aren't supposed to help with veteran applications or like aid and attendance, for example. It's my understanding that the Veterans Administration believes that veterans themselves can do the applications initially, and lawyers are supposed to get involved later on if there's any type of denial or delay, something like that. So generally speaking, we can guide, but we're not undertaking the actual VA aid and attendance application.
Right. There was an issue from Gina, I say back on 123, she wrote, I had the same issue with Suffolk County. I knew my client was not eligible for VA benefits because he did not serve during wartime, even though they served. Big issue. My Medicaid application was on hold.
Right.
So I don't know. So it's something that's happening. But I think, Jim, you're addressing it now with the VSO.
Yeah.
And that'll probably, so anyone that the VSO, if they find they're initially eligible because they're a wartime veteran, the veteran will have to apply no matter what and get a denial. And that's when the potential transfers or other things would come up at that point, or you're on Medicaid already, or things like that would kick the application.
Right.
Okay.
Right. If the disability ruling is held up, can the recipient pay medical bills to cover the overage to start Medicaid?
Well, that's true. Yes, you can submit. That's how one way you can get. If you submitted medical bills with your application, Medicaid will offset your overage by the amount of those medical bills. Let's say you had $6,000 worth of medical bills, you had $1,000 excess income or overage or spend down. For the next 6 months, Medicaid would say, okay, you could take your $1,000 and pay those medical bills. You don't have an overage.
Right.
After the 6th month, then you have an overage again. And that's just the way that works.
Got it. All right. With that being said, thank you, of course, Dennis. I'll see you in the hallway in a few minutes. Jim, thank you so much. It's great to see you again. We very much so appreciate your willingness to be here and to share what you know and what they tell you. We certainly understand that you don't know everything here just because there's so many other hands involved. So again, thank you, and we hope to see you again next year.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the summer. Bye, everybody.
Okay.